I want to share something with you today that I think a lot of people already feel in their gut, but haven't seen laid out plainly in front of them. There is a growing group of older Australians for whom the age pension simply does not cover the rent. Not almost cover it. Not mostly cover it. For some seniors, the rent alone costs more than their entire fortnightly pension. And that's before they've bought a single bag of groceries, paid a single electricity bill, or filled a single prescription. Today I want to walk you through the actual figures, talk about who this is happening to, and be honest about what the government is and isn't doing about it. Let me start with some numbers that came out of a major survey of 772 Australian renters aged between 55 and 69, conducted in March of this year. 6 in 10 of those people are already in what's called housing stress. That means they are spending more than 30% of their income on rent. And a third of them are spending more than 40%. When you're spending 40 cents of every dollar you earn just on where you sleep, there is very little left for anything else. 4 in 10 said they definitely could not afford to rent privately on the age pension. Not that it would be difficult. Not that they'd have to cut back. They said they could not do it at all. 1 in 5 already feel insecure in their current home right now, before they've even hit retirement age. And almost 3/4, 73%, worry about becoming housing insecure in their later years. These are not fringe statistics. These are the majority experience for older Australians who rent. Let me put some concrete numbers around this so you can see exactly what we are talking about. The full age pension for a single person right now is $1,200.90 per fortnight. That's the maximum. That's everything: the base rate, the pension supplement, the energy supplement, all of it. Now let's look at rent. The median weekly rent in Sydney, as of April this year, hit $990 for a house. $990 a week. That is $1,980 every fortnight. For a single pensioner receiving $1,200, the rent alone is already 65% more than their entire income. There is no mathematical version of that situation that works. Even apartments, $780 a week in Sydney. That's $1,560 a fortnight. Still more than the entire pension. Now Sydney is the extreme end of it. But even in cheaper cities and regional areas, the situation for pensioner renters is serious. Rent assistance exists to help, but independent analysis has found that Commonwealth rent assistance has not kept pace with actual rental increases, which means the gap between what the government contributes and what rent actually costs has been growing wider, not narrower. Now I want to talk about who specifically is bearing the worst of this, because it's not evenly distributed. Single older women are in the most vulnerable position of any group in this situation. One organization working with seniors in housing stress put it about as plainly as you can put it. They said that if you are a single older woman in the private rental market on the pension, you are likely to be at risk of homelessness. Not at some theoretical future risk. Likely, right now. Think about why that is. Women in Australia's current senior generation often had interrupted work histories, raising children, caring for partners, working in lower-paid industries. That means lower super balances. It means less savings. And when a partner dies, the couple's pension ends and the surviving person suddenly has to manage on a single pension in a housing market that was already difficult when there were two incomes coming in. The survey found that median super balances for people aged 55 to 69, who rent, sit somewhere between $170,000 and $210,000. 1 in 3 of them said their super would last less than 5 years if they had to rely on it while renting. After that, there's nothing left but the pension. And as we've just talked about, the pension alone doesn't cover the rent. I want to be specific about the real-world impact of this, because the numbers on paper don't fully capture what this looks like in someone's actual daily life. More than half of the people surveyed are cutting back on groceries and on social connection. Not dining out less. Buying less food. A quarter are cutting back on healthcare and medication. When you're choosing between rent and your blood pressure tablets, that is a genuine health crisis, not just a financial one. When people in the survey were asked what they would do if they could no longer afford their rental home, the answers were deeply concerning. Some said they'd move to a cheaper area, often meaning moving away from family, from their doctor, from everything familiar to them. Some said they'd look for temporary accommodation. Some said they'd have to move in with family members who may not have the space or the means to take them in. More than a quarter said they simply didn't know what they would do. That is not a small number of people in an unusual situation. These are hundreds of thousands of Australians who do not have an answer to that question. I want to be fair here and tell you what's actually happening at a policy level, because there are things being done, even if they fall well short of what's needed. Commonwealth rent assistance has been increased by more than 50% since 2022. That is a real increase and it does help. But independent analysis consistently shows that even after that increase, nearly half of low-income households receiving rent assistance are still in rental stress. The increase didn't fully close the gap, because rents themselves also went up significantly over the same period. There are also social housing commitments in the budget, more funding, more beds, and there are build-to-rent measures that could eventually add new rental supply to the market. The government has also introduced new renter protections around evictions and repeated rent increases. All of that matters. None of it fixes the problem in the near term for someone who is 68 years old, on a single pension, and facing a rent increase next month. The organisation Mission Australia has called for rent assistance to be increased by at least 60% more on top of what it already is. Other groups are calling for an expansion of social housing specifically designated for older Australians. 8 in 10 people in the survey said they support the government investing more in social and affordable housing. That is an overwhelming majority. The political support for action is there. Whether the action comes fast enough is a different question. Here's the honest reality. For older Australians who own their home, retirement is generally manageable. The pension covers most things, there's no rent, and the biggest financial variables are things like medical costs and whether the share market is having a good or bad year. But for older Australians who rent, and there are more of them every year, the system as it currently exists does not fully work. And for the most vulnerable among them, particularly single older women without significant super savings, it can mean living on the edge of losing your home every single month. That doesn't mean there are no options or no support. Rent assistance exists, Centrelink has hardship provisions, and community organisations can help navigate what's available. If you or someone you know is in this situation, please don't stay silent about it. There are services specifically for this. But the broader problem is real, it's getting worse, and it deserves to be talked about clearly rather than buried in statistics. If this video helped you understand the full picture, please share it. This is exactly the kind of thing that doesn't make the front page, but affects more people than almost any other issue we cover. Subscribe to Senior Daily Report. We'll keep covering it. I'll see you tomorrow.